Yo, good morning. Yo, what's up, everybody? Just wanted to invite people to chill in the studio for a little minute. I definitely want to show you the progress, Jen. So my buddy Jennifer was gracious enough to allow me to use her and her children as models for the next step in the reader series. So I'm really excited about these paintings. What are we painting today? I'm working on some feet. Painting some feet and just trying to prep some stuff for upcoming pieces. So I'm in here DJing too. So actually, since I have this iPad, I have this iPad, and I have a laptop and all this other shit. So this here is actually the last piece that I'm doing from a actual paper photograph. Like the last couple of pieces I've been doing, I've just used the iPad to hold the image on, and it works a lot better because you can zoom in and see more details. And I always honestly didn't realize like how hard I struggle for details on the photograph because you can just look at it closer. You can't really zoom in on it. But and so that's why I practice my photography a lot, just trying to make sure I can get good lighting and good details. And so this piece is coming out pretty good. It's almost done. I'm working on the leaves here and just trying to get those highlights on the leaves. Yo, Garland, what's up, bro? But this is a young gentleman I met at damn, where did I meet this guy? The University of Scranton. And I asked him to model for me. And so I'm going to put 2 more pieces in the reader series this year. And then I'm going to step away from the reader series for a while and try to do some other stuff that I've been wanting to do for a couple years now. But this is all sketched up. That's ready to go. And then, like I said, my friend Jennifer and her kids, this is going to be one of the better reader series. For one, it's the first time that I'm incorporating children into the reader series. For two, it's the first time that there are 3 individuals in the reader series in one scene. So I'm just really excited about this. It's a very, very dynamic scene. It has a lot going on in here, a lot of emotion, the books, and it's going to be like a full background. So it's not like an abstract. So really, really, really excited to start on that piece. This is the last piece that I just finished. Still going with the stencil. So this is acrylic paint, and the stencils are spray paint. So this is considered, multimedia because all of the portrait is oil paints. So we have oils, we have acrylics, we have spray paints, all on the same piece. And I'm really happy how this one came out. And so I'm gonna take the next couple of months and finish these 2 pieces. I'm in conversation with a few clients right now about some commissions. So if commissions do come up, it always slows down my own art, which is good and bad. I love painting what I want to paint, but then at the same time, I love when people actually pay me to paint something for them, and I can never pass it up. So when I do get a commission, everything that I'm working on just gets put to the side for a minute, and so I can focus on the paid work for a client. And so I'm already anticipating that over the next couple of months. But I say in the next few days, I can probably finish this piece up, start on the next two pieces, whatever commissions come up in between those, and then the last part of this year and all of next year, I'm going to be focusing on some more. Uh, gonna be going back to some of my childhood stuff and do like more fantasy art. And so this is another example of me painting what I want to paint. Uh, because I have a foot fetish and my girlfriend has very pretty feet. I think her feet are beautiful. Um, and people say, why do you pick feet? And I always ask, why do women spend millions and millions of dollars each year on manicures and pedicures and acrylic nails and designs and colors and all this stuff? Because women know that men are attracted to pretty feet. And if you got busted feet, I feel bad for you, you know. And if you don't like feet, I get it. I understand. It's not everybody's thing. Everybody don't think feet are attractive, but once again, women spend thousands of dollars on a pair of shoes made by whatever custom designer with their toes open. You know, it's a certain thing. Uh, and like I say, over the years, I've been kind of hesitant to paint images specifically for myself. I always want to share my art and try to use the art as a tool of, um, inspiration, motivation, as a source of knowledge or a way to try to spread a certain amount of education. So I see art as a very, very useful tool to directly impact individuals on an individual level. And that's what I use the art for. But at the same time, I think I'm far enough into my artistic career where if I paint shit that I want to paint, people will still take me serious. I think if I would have did a bunch of weird shit like this early on, people look at it like, what the fuck? But um, I like feet. I like weed. It's as simple as that. There is no deeper meaning. There is no hidden message. There is no esoteric agenda. There is nothing else to this except the fact that I like feet and I like weed. And I've never seen an image of feet with weed. And so I created that image because that's what I wanted to see. And this shit right here set in my mind for years. I've had this image in my mind for years before I decided to put it on canvas because I just knew like it's not going to be received by everybody. And it is what it is. So at the same time, like I said, I feel like I'm at a point where I can take time out and make some shit just for myself. And if you like it, that's awesome. That is a definite plus. And if you don't like it or if you don't get it, I can understand that. And it is what it is, you know. And the next series that I'm working on is in that same vein of art that is. I even hate to say that shit, but it's just for me. This is just for me. JUSTFR. Anyway, damn, why that shit came in my head again. But I'm making art specifically for me, images that I want to see. Not trying to use it as an educational tool or anything else for anyone else. But if people like it, that's awesome. It is a plus if other people actually like this shit. But if other people don't like it, that's okay. I'm at a point where I'm comfortable with that. I don't think that everybody has to like my art. Everybody doesn't like my art now. So it is what it is. And, so I'm gonna be painting some feet and I'm gonna be painting some aliens and I'm gonna be painting people whispering secrets to each other. Because that's some shit that I want to see, yo. And this is so this is some middle school stuff, but mostly high school stuff. And yo, good morning, happy Sunday, everybody. Chilling in the building with the motherfucking Prince. Um, and so I was always big on like fucking aliens and armor and swords. And so I actually want to go back into some of this stuff that I was very interested in as a young budding artist. Why did I design all these blades? I don't know. They don't even look like they would be useful in combat, but I'm definitely gonna try to take some of these um, different elements that I would go over and over and over as a kid. That was a good one. Ain't no date. I've been doing this forever. Done them. I can't find where's that alien thing at? Superpowers. I'm talking about shit like this. I'm gonna start putting like some. I'm putting some different shit on my canvas, yeah. I drew that from life. All right, this isn't the notebook I was thinking about actually, but there's still some pretty good stuff in there. So if anyone is familiar, just can I get like a thumbs up or a 100 in the comments? Does does anyone know who the Sumerians are? Or has anyone ever heard of the Sumerian culture? They're one of the oldest known cultures coming out of Mesopotamia. Anybody ever heard of the Sumerians? Here, this is what I wanted to show y'all. Here's some stuff. Yo, motherfucking horse. What's good, bro? We got down. If y'all ever heard of the Sumerians, yo, they got a creation origin story that is basically like the oldest written story that we can find. Um, and their creation myth is fucking crazy. So once again, anybody ever heard of the Sumerians? And if you ever heard of the Sumerians, have you ever heard of the Anunnaki? There's some crazy shit. I'm telling you, it's just it's not that crazy. It's not any more crazier than any other creation story actually. All right, so we know who the Sumerians are, and their writing that is known as cuneiform, and the story they tell about their progenitors or their creators, known as the Anunnaki, which had characters like Anu, where some people say we derive the word annual from. is from the name Anu. And then there's other characters like Inky and Enlil. And it kind of goes into the theory of Nibiru or Planet X, Tiamat, and all this other shit. I think I'm gonna start making some alien shit again, yo. Just cause yo, even before I ever heard of the Sumerians or the Anunnaki, yo, as a kid, yo, I just drew aliens with elongated skulls. This is my own design. This came out of my own fucking head. This was before I was up on like any documentaries or any of that shit, yo. I was always used to just read this like comic books and once again I grew up before the internet, so I couldn't just like search the internet for shit. I watched shit like X Files, and so my access to information and especially visual images of extraterrestrial beings was kind of limited. Not unless you just watch ET and Star Wars and shit, but I've been down fascinated about aliens with elongated skulls. And then I started listening to this guy named Brian Forrester, and he does research in Peru. And there are these Peruvian elongated skulls that people aren't really sure, like, where the fuck these things come from or what they were. And so I was really trying to, like, develop this character. Um, this dude got all kind of shit going on. And then, like, I started getting on Dragon Ball Z and shit. But yeah, my homies would do all these comic book mock-ups and try to make our own comic books and shit. So I think I really do think that some of my art is gonna start looking like this again, but like 10 times more advanced. And like I said, I just want to revisit some of these ideas because I'm still a major science fiction buff. I love history and really like reading Black studies and African studies. But I really, really, really love fucking science fiction and aliens and shit too, yo. I'm really, really into that shit so much, and like I say, and for a long time, it hasn't like crept anywhere into my art, but I think it's time for that shit to make a comeback. I think I may have mm, this is my old game. I don't know which one it is. But once again, even before I started like learning like in-depth things about ancient cultures, for some reason I put an extra planet back in, and I imagine the pyramids being some type of energy source or a power station or some kind of energy conductor or something like that. And so I can get the picture of this moon light coming out and you can see this different planet back there. I don't know, like, and then once I started researching stuff, it's like, these are possible scenarios. And then, I got some other old Asian painting I did. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm currently working on. Just like I said, really just want to hop in here and share it with you guys. I've been really busy, which has been very fortunate for me. Uh, just did this show, Passion and Patience, and it will be up until June the 9th. So that's pretty good. This was the last, well, the other piece that I just finished for the Whisper series. And now this is the new. This is the new. And if this doesn't sell, I can't wait to like show all of these side by side. It's gonna be so fun. So yeah, still doing shows. Still working on some new stuff and have some ideas on canvas. And then I got some ideas in my head about a new series that should be taking shape later this year. Like I said, it's just a bunch of ideas right now, and I have some like images in my head that I really want to focus on, but it's still really just kind of a little bit hazy. And so over the next couple of weeks, I'll try to like really solidify the imagery that I want to use in order to tell this next story. Once again, using a lot of myth and lore from things like the Anunnaki story, which was given to us by the Sumerians. And then there's the Epic of Gilgamesh, and um, you can even look at the fucking Bible and the Elohim that are in the Bible. You know, like try to touch on those topics and see like who the fuck were these people? You know what I'm saying? Kind of like the Atlantis story. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of ancient myths about, once again, a progenitor race or a pre-existing civilization. And then you listen to people like Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock, and they'll describe the younger Dryas. And now we're finding things like um, Gobekli Tepe and shit like that. So it just makes you think. That shit make me think. That shit be having me wondering and pondering like a motherfucker. And it's just, fun brain exercises. Nothing that we can probably do anything about in real life anyway, but just cool concepts to think about. And I think I want to just make some images for myself that when I look at that shit, I'll be like, that's fucking dope. And if somebody else can hop on that shit, that'd be cool too. But so, and I hope I'm not disappointing anybody with this shit, because, like I said, I already foresee this project taking me a year or two. So if y'all don't see all the like positive, motivational, black art, with all the books and all the education and all the beautiful images of us looking all smart and dapper and shit, just be patient. I'll get back to it. But right now, this shit about to be some whole other shit. Yeah, I really need to get these brushes started. Is there the water? don't know how long this water's been sitting here, and that's what I say. You know, that's what I say. I kind of really started it with some of the still lifes I did. I remember that's the first time it was the first or second time you came to one of my shows, and I had the still life, and it's like I did a still life of just objects in my house, like shit that are mine that I really like, you know. And so I painted some of my video games and my weed tray, and I painted some of my anime movies and a bottle of liquor. Damn, I sound like a druggie, but I'm not. But anyway, but yeah, I just painted random shit that's cool to me. And I was kind of like, you know, and then I did the feet. And then some people liked it, some people didn't. A lot of people thought it was weird, but it's all good. So I'm getting more and more comfortable doing art specifically for myself. Because, like I say, I think there's a lot of imagery that could be created that hasn't been yet. And yeah, so we'll see how this shit turns out. I hope it's cool. You know what I'm saying? I just hope I can make some cool art because to me, like, I think the idea is cool as fuck, yo. Do we ever see a lot of aliens in like fine art? I'm trying to think, yo. I'm pretty sure there's like somebody out there who's done like fine oil paintings of like aliens and shit, but not the way I'm gonna do it. That's why I had to get that old Nas album again. No, it's just not playing. What happened? Mm, anyway, I don't know why they wouldn't play just now. It'll play that, but it won't play this. Why? Anyway, damn, that's crazy. Well, guys, I really do need to early morning grind. I really do need to get on these brushes a little bit. Matter of fact, you know what? Since we already in here, if you guys do want to stick around for just like another 5 or 6 minutes or so, I will actually put the brush to canvas so we can watch some of these highlights pop out on this green leaf, on this strawberry. Let's see how we can do this. If I turn the camera like that, wham. All right, and if I put this tripod right here. All right, so now what I want to do is, um, I may actually focus on this leaf right under the toe here first, and then work my way down real quick. If anybody wants to jump in the stream, that's cool. Also, I'm live on YouTube, but my YouTube has a link to it where you can come and chat live in the YouTube channel as well. So it's kind of might be a little difficult to focus on both for a second. But I do actually want to paint something real quick. Oh, Ustream, you have the worst of the worst view for the next 5 minutes. Let me work on this. You can almost see what I'm doing through the phone. That's crazy. All right. Oh my god. All right, guys. So I haven't painted in almost a day. I'm gonna throw some colors on this palette real quick. I'm gonna add a little bit of Prussian blue. I don't want to use black for these shadows. Prussian blue and Van Dyke brown. Maybe if you even add a little bit of like a alizarin crimson in there, but you don't necessarily need to use black to get that shadow. And so I'm not going to use black against that green. I really want that green to be able to still kind of shine through even in that shadowy area. So, and blue and green complement each other pretty well. So, oh shit, my bad, guys. I should have checked my palette before I even started doing this shit. So I'm adding Prussian blue, a little bit of Vidarian green, and then some Van Dyke brown. And I already have some permanent green light and some Naples yellow on there. And I'm going to put a little bit of linseed oil in this cup. Because since I'm layering this right here, and this is the second layer, the paint doesn't need to be as thick in some areas. So if I feel like I need to thin it down, I already have that seed oil on standby. All right, now we should be able to go. It's very, very subtle. This little highlight that's in this deep shadow, but you can still make out that green color of the leaf. And if I were to use black in order to create this shadow, when I attempt to apply this lighter shade of green, it would have completely muddied the color and it wouldn't look accurate at all. So black is very useful, but um, I've learned to use it very sparingly because it won't add a true tone to some portions or some areas if you over oversaturate your canvas with black. Black and white actually aren't colors. Black is like the base of all color, and white is the absence of color. Because if you get all your markers or all your crayons or all your color pencils or all your paints and you mix all of them together, then you get black. Alright. Might want to take a blender. Hmm. Might use a little yellow. And deeper yellow. Yeah. Hmm. The awkward silence of the studio. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody who was in attendance, and I may be posting this piece in a couple of days. Thanks.
Just hanging around.
What are you doing? Dear Lord, because I'm just oh, it's 10% off today. It's only $180.
Let's go.
Hey man, real quick, you're gonna want to flip the grip. Right hand is low. Happy to help. And glad we're growing the game.
That's the shit I'm talking about. What are you saying, bro?
Oh, it's 10% off today. It's only $180.
Contrary to popular belief, Africa is not
All right, my bad. I hate when I get stuck on Instagram like that. It's the fucking worst. It's so terrible. But it's so much funny shit. See, this is what I don't like about this iPad, yo. I swear to God, the YouTube fucking app does not like working on it. It just does not like to work on that fucking iPad. So now I'm forced to do YouTube on my phone. Yo, what's up? What's up? I meant to put this on the speaker.
When life has you playing hurry up.
Let's go.
Hertz has the fleet in North America.
Hello there, you awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on Stay Free with Russell Brand. It's Friday, and what an incredible week it's been. Joe Biden has announced he will run again with an extraordinary video. Tucker Carlson has been ousted from the mainstream. Don Lemon has left. It's left us all in disarray. We've got some news analysis coming up, as well as a fantastic conversation with one of my favorite guests I've ever had. Dr. Ian McGilchrist, who will be talking to you about psychology, neurology, and the way that the state is using your own mental illness as a kind of mind dagger against you, how you are being controlled, nudged, behaviorally manipulated by systems and forces way, way, way beyond your control. We're going to talk a little bit, first of all, about Summer Davos. Have me a blast. Is that what we're talking about?
That's happening.
Davos is back.
Mm.
Sometimes on a week like this, it can seem like the world is being coordinated by a centralized globalist force where technocrats get together to manipulate our consciousness. And that's because, to a degree, that is exactly what's happening. If you thought Winter Davos in Davos was fun, wait till you get a load of Summer Davos in China. That's right.
Once a year isn't enough, is it, for Davos? Let's be
I
honest.
can't get through the year,
No,
Gareth,
no.
with just one look at Klaus Schwab in an ethnically inappropriate outfit. I want to see Klaus Schwab with Xi Jinping. Who's in charge? Xi Jinping.
Yeah, I thought that was a type of clothing or something for a minute.
This is a type of clothing.
It certainly is.
Klaus Schwab. That's how we estimate. That's. We should say we've editorialised that. That's not a factual image.
No, that's not an actual image.
We think that's what Klaus Schwab would wear
and will.
wear at Summer Davos. So let us know in the chat and the comments. In fact, why don't you make your own artwork of Klaus Schwab? Be as adventurous and as bold as you want. Unless you're watching on YouTube, in which case you should stay within the WHO guidelines, which includes, I think,
Which he certainly does.
he stays well within those guidelines. I stay within the guidelines. I don't like to stray. Far as Justin Trudeau authoritarianism with the face made up with the hair perfect. I wouldn't like to pry. That's right. That's what's going on. Summer Davos. Who wouldn't want to participate in that?
Well, I wonder what's going to be going on, because obviously it's in China rather than Davos.
They can't call it. I don't think they should be allowed to call it Davos if it ain't in
I
Davos.
don't think so.
It's confusing.
What will they call it?
You'd be able to go in
With
that
this?
top. I think so. I think
Yeah.
you'd be welcome.
Some shorts, no
They'd love you,
sandals. Who
Why
knows?
don't you and Lee Fang, guests from earlier in the week,
Yeah.
go together,
I'd love that. I'd love
hand
that.
in hand?
I've already asked him, actually.
Fang and Robo. I've actually been texting.
No.
myself.
It's me and Lee. We've got the connection.
You're hurting me. The Biden administration has invested 1.9 million in disinformation education. So the actual presidential administration is trying to censor and control and legitimize the further manipulation of the media. Let me just get into the facts of this. I'm going to read this out under the assumption that reading it is going to improve my understanding of the story. The Biden administration is set to spend almost $2 million of taxpayer dollars on a media education program to train educators, media professionals, librarians, government employees, and information specialists in foreign countries on how to combat disinformation, according to grant documents seen by Washington Examiner. That, whatever we needed that could have gone. Now, let's have a look at the next still. Meanwhile, Meta's oversight board recommends continuing censorship until the WHO calls an end to the pandemic. So it's called into the WHO. Are we still in the middle of the pandemic? This is still it.
Certainly is.
Do you feel like you're in the middle of a pandemic? Let me know right now if you are locked within your house, masked up to the hilt, vaccinated within an inch of your life. And remember, I have no opinion on what you should do. I mean, just stay healthy, eat well, look after yourself, those kind of
Bit of
things.
exercise.
Vitamin D, bit of exercise.
Some of
Probably
that.
do get out of the house,
Yeah,
actually.
I think so.
Probably the mask
Probably always should have done.
benefiting you. Should have done that in the first place, as a matter of fact. Probably should have done that in the first place. Is there not anything else we're not going to be talking about?
Well, we can discuss this. I mean, obviously,
4 minutes.
the way in which this is going to impact us is continued censorship, because we know those guidelines, because we're on YouTube literally now as we speak and having to adhere to those guidelines. And those guidelines will continue to inform the way Facebook or Meta approaches censorship. So it's like the kind of continued sweeping, I don't know, whatever you call it, of censorship that will continue. And I guess it also highlights the kind of power that the WHO have.
And organisations like the WEF, but while they sometimes seem comical, particularly when Klaus Schwab is wearing that hat, they still have incredible influence and sway. The WHO will still be, tangentially at least, managing content on Facebook. You still won't be able to say things like vitamin D is good for you.
Yep.
You won't be able to talk about the booster trials that Moderna undertook.
Well, we can't literally do it right
Literally
now.
can't talk about those trials. Can't talk about the efficacy of non-sanctioned,
No.
possibly out of patent medications
So
that
no.
could be used. Can't talk about. Can you talk about traces found in breast milk? Can you talk
I
about
mean,
that?
you know that you can't do any of these things.
I can't do any
So
of
why
it.
are you testing me on?
These things, I'm testing you to within an inch of your life.
You're making a point.
I'm literally making a
But obviously,
point.
with Facebook and Meta, we saw the story earlier in the week as well about the Seymour Hersh and the Nord Stream, the way in which Facebook are using, I think it's Norwegian legal system to censor that story. So it's just another way in which this creep of censorship and sweeping for disinformation. Obviously, the thing with the Biden administration and the disinformation in education is it's like people like they're training educators, so that's teachers, media professionals, librarians, government employees. That's a pretty big section of the workforce that they're essentially training, a bit like we were told by Michael Schellenberger when they were bringing journalists to, where was it, the place that he talked about? Aspen, the Aspen Institute. But you're essentially training people to
I'm
look
really
for.
happy that you felt that you could rely on me for
You
that.
could, well,
that
you're
information.
one of my go-to investigative journalists, I would say.
The Aspen Institute preempted the Hunter Biden laptop,
Right.
told journalists that there would likely be a laptop story and that they should assume that it's Russian disinformation. We now know that the Biden administration went to the CIA in order to construct that letter signed by 50 CIA signatories to suggest that it was that the Hunter Biden story was likely disinformation. And now this category of censorship and disinformation is on the rise, i.e. a new threat, a new problem has been created. We're old enough to remember when it was just old school Cold War. That's what the problem was, an ideological block behind the Berlin Wall. Then it became a slightly more abstract war against terror. Then we've experienced the war against germs, and now it's the war against ideas. It's becoming more and more conceptual, more and more difficult to define, therefore more and more easy to oppose alternative narratives, shut down defense, legitimize surveillance, justify control, censorship, and smearing.
Yeah, and we spoke earlier in the week about that essay by Leighton Woodhouse, didn't we? About the relationship between the media, in relation obviously to Tucker at the time, the mainstream media and the government, and the way in which that has fragmented. So that's less and less potent and powerful for the government now. So they're turning to censorship of social media, and this is like an ongoing way in which they're going to try and retain the status quo in some way.
Yes, that's right. And I feel like, as we have said before in one of our journalistic endeavors, that the Tucker Carlson story, in a sense, is an interesting symbol of the decline in trust in the mainstream media. Tucker Carlson came to epitomize an authentic voice, a powerful voice in particular for his detractors, but the kind of a voice that is unlikely to be able to continue to succeed within the framework of the mainstream media that increasingly requires siloed audiences and a model that's dependent on data capture, incendiary rhetoric, and the increase of polemicism, even though people that hate Tucker Carlson say that's precisely what he's guilty of, although increasingly he was talking about how both parties are equally bad. Like he said stuff
It
like
was
that.
definitely going that way. I mean,
Yeah.
we could make an argument for it if these some of the reasons why he might have been let go by Fox News. Was he starting to say the wrong things?
One of the things I like most about Leighton Woodhouse's article available on his Substack is his suggestion that what we are seeing now is the emergence of a genuine threat of an independent political movement within American politics, that the bi-party system itself is under threat because of the ability to communicate new ideas. That's why the category of disinformation has to be created so that people can be denied access to information that will stop them being compliant. That's actually why it is. It's not like, oh no, people are going to start taking medicine that ain't good for them, or not taking medicine that is good for them, or not support a war in the right sort of way. These are the arguments that are used to legitimize censorship. The censorship is required in order to shut down conversations that are detrimental to the ongoing success.
Yeah, I mean, that is literally happening with those Pentagon revelations that we have learned about. We learned some new truths about the Ukraine war. What is immediately coming off the back of that is new regulation and new proposals that the Biden administration are considering pushing through to target now some of those sites where people were able to share ideas, in this case, obviously share state secrets, but ways in which, again, truth is being
We're just some
revealed.
guys coming together to share state secrets, hang around with our tops off, call each other OGs. Yeah, as we said many times at the time, the fact that the content of the leaks was ignored in favour of condemnation of the young man that made the leaks is telling, particularly when some of the revelations included that there are American boots on the ground, the phrase that people like to use. I don't like when I find myself accidentally saying things like that, like boots on the
It's like
ground.
you've inadvertently become one of the pundits.
So I don't like deep
Pundits.
dive for the same
Right.
reason.
No.
I don't like popular maxims.
No. What would you call it? What?
Boots on the ground.
Yeah, boots on the ground.
Tootsies on the terra firma.
There you
There's
go.
American Tootsies on the terra firma.
Mm.
Twinkle toes.
Better story.
It is, isn't it? Because you imagine them now, just like they're a lovely bunch of guys, just
Yeah.
running around, scampering about.
What about deep dive? And don't be careful now. We're on YouTube.
I would say a profound plunder.
Snow, flower, and beauty.
I mean, if you need alliteration, which some have said is the leper's bell of poetry, I feel, no, I don't know deep dive. I actually struggle to find an appropriate alternative to deep dive. That's why you fall into it, because deep dive entered into the language relatively recently, probably only a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
To find an alternative to it,
Maybe this is the slippery slope.
now we're going to get on a slippery slope with today's guest.
Maybe, maybe that's how it happened. Before you know it, you're on CNN. You're Brian Stelter or one of those guys.
If you meet, and look, I pray you never do, because I wouldn't want you to offend him, Dr. Ian McGilchrist. The last thing, he's a respected academic and a very brilliant and influential man. The last thing that he wants is for you to be trying to get him on a slippery slope, like you're in some Floridian water park,
Okay.
trying to butter him up
Mm.
in a tube.
I won't do that. I think I'm going to meet him in a second.
It's going to be awkward, I think. Dr. Ian McGilchrist is a brilliant and groundbreaking author and intellectual. I've had the great privilege of meeting you because I'm stifling a burp. Can you tell that?
These are the nerves kicking in.
I'm not nervous about Dr. Ian McGilchrist. I've met him before.
Right.
I've spoke to him. He's one of them Ians that's got too many eyes in his name.
I know the ones.
You know, some people, Ian, will just have the one eye.
Yeah.
Some Ians, I have another eye.
Yeah. Get rid of the eye.
Before you're through with the eyes, there's no eye in Ian. Actually, there's two. So I've got you there. Confused you. His groundbreaking book, The Master and His Emissary, is often misquoted and misused because people talk about, people might say to you, Gareth, oh, you're very right-brained. That sort of thing. Ian McGilchrist, you don't want to hear that.
No.
Because there's complex networks in neurology. It's not that the left brain's doing this and the right brain's doing that, although it's not even as simple as that, because there are certain traits that are characteristic of the hemispheres, and it's these misunderstandings that we're going to be clearing up.
It's reductive.
I hate all reductivism,
Yeah.
which is in itself a reductive.
Nice.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I just came up with.
Do you want me to leave now?
Don't you dare leave me, because there's a lot of actual, I would say, erotic tension. I'm not going to start saying there's erotic tension between Dr. Ian McGilchrist and myself, because I'm about to have a very serious conversation, which we're going to talk about a variety of topics, including Tucker's departure and how a figurehead like Tucker Carlson rose up. We're going to be talking about Joe Biden, what it means when you have an atrophy and cadaverous figure running for president for 4 more years, presenting himself as radical when he couldn't be more corporatized and modern establishment figure, and how was the pandemic used to induce mass compliance, as well as the ensuing and a demonstrable mental health crisis that was exacerbated and potentially even not caused, because the mental health crisis has been going on for a little while, but it certainly got worse during the pandemic. Lots and lots of things to talk about, Gareth. So if you would do me,
Why don't you throw to off YouTube and I'll.
I'm not going to be frightened off YouTube yet. Gareth, get out of here. There's only so much an on-screen assistant can do. I'm going to be inviting our guest, Dr. Ian McGilchrist, to join us now. Stay free with Russell Brand. See it first on Rumble.
I was brought up at the tail end of a culture in which it was thought good to be self-reliant, to be resilient, not to fall apart if you were opposed or criticised. And what has happened during my lifetime is that I think we've gotten lazy. I think we've got used to having everything easy.
I wonder how an epochal shift like that might have occurred. Isn't it likely that such a significant shift has been somehow culturally brought about?
There are many, many aspects to this, but one is that we have got further and further from real community, which is local, the sense of a place and a group and a rooting, a belonging, a place of belonging. And because of mobilization and industrialization, that basis of trust, which is there in a palpable, intuitively felt society, has been lost.
So I just would like to query your assumption that it's the individual's negligence that has led to this infantilization.
No, Russell, that's not what I said.
Won't accept that, no. Stay free with Russell Brand. See it first on Rumble. Thank you very much for joining me, Doctor. Are you happy with your introduction?
It's a very good one, a fine one.
You said that I was incorrectly anticipating the conclusions to our conversation. Any particular instance where I've been misapprehending what's likely to take place?
Oh, I wouldn't like to prejudice our subsequent conversation.
God, you're brilliant at this, aren't you? I think that what our viewers will be most interested in initially is understanding the nature of your work. We've of course had a conversation before. I enjoyed very much your conversation with Jordan Peterson, and I wonder if we could start by talking about how the principles of psychiatry and psychology more broadly, even though I understand that much of your work has a neurological basis rather than just analytical psychiatry, how these tools are applied in sociology and in particular in the kind of messaging that we might receive from, for example, government authority.
Yes, I thought the things that you said were right, that there are many things in the social sphere to which my hemisphere hypothesis is very relevant. But I just didn't think that the conclusions were necessarily as straightforward as the ones you might have outlined, that's all.
I'm afraid I have been accused of reductivism before, Doctor.
I think one of my main messages is that one of the problems with our era is the lack of ability to see both sides of a question, the inability to have nuance or to finesse an answer. Everything has to be, if you'll pardon the expression, black and white. And that's not a good world in which to live.
We've been discussing this week in particular how the rise of polemicism is written by the collapse of the previous economic models of mainstream media outlets that could previously confidently appeal to a broad mainstream base, knowing that they would be talking to both, in the case of the United States of America, liberal and conservative voters.
Yes.
Now that a plain fissure has appeared as a result of social media's ability to use targeted and bespoke advertising, mainstream media outlets benefit from polemicism. They know who their audience are and they know who their audience are not. This has increased, as you correctly identified, as you say, black and white arguments, and it's getting worse. These kind of silos are, I think, leading to sort of any number of problems, including a sort of a cry for more centralized authority, perhaps even a return to outmoded ideas like ethno-nationalism, which I would, I'm sympathetic to, but I appreciate and understand how that might happen in a bifurcated media and sociological space. But before we get into some of the particularities of our current affairs-oriented conversation, can you please tell me some of the common misunderstandings that are applied to your work so that I can stop making them?
Thank you. No, the first thing I have to say to anyone who hasn't read either The Master and His Emissary or The Matter of Things, my two works on this area of difference between brain hemispheres, is forget everything you think you know, because it'll be wrong. And what that's about is that back in the 60s and 70s, there was a new operation pioneered to help people with epilepsy that was making their life unlivable. And basically, epilepsy is an electrical storm. And if it goes right across the brain, the person loses consciousness. And so these people were losing consciousness very, very often. And the idea was that if they could just divide the two hemispheres one from the other, which you can do by cutting a band of fibers at the base of the two hemispheres called the corpus callosum, then you would stop it spreading and they would have at least one hemisphere working. And for those individuals, this was a life-saving procedure. But then what happened was that psychologists quite rightly thought, we can find out more about the differences between each hemisphere by interviewing it on its own. There are techniques in the lab whereby you could engage, if you like, one hemisphere at a time in a split brain patient. and see what the differences were. And out of that arose a sort of quick and dirty consensus that the left hemisphere was logical and linguistic, whereas the right hemisphere was, I don't know, given to painting pictures and a bit of fantasy and rather emotional. And all this is completely wrong. I mean, completely wrong. Both hemispheres take part in language and reason, and both are involved in pictures and emotion. In fact, the most lateralized emotion is anger, and guess what? It lateralizes to the left hemisphere. And I can talk more about the differences between those two hemispheres and why that changes the world, if you like. But one of the things I suggest in The Master of His Emissary is that we have slipped more and more into a world in which the kind of things that we know via the left hemisphere dominate to the expense of knowing really or understanding or receiving any of the rich stuff that the left hemisphere could tell us. And the right hemisphere is the one we should be listening to, not just because of my prejudice, but because I've demonstrated at great length in the matter with things. It's deluded, it's false, it's wrong, it's non-veridical. The left hemisphere on its own. It needs the right hemisphere to guide it. One way of thinking about this is that the left hemisphere has a targeted attention to a detail, and this is to enable us to grab stuff. Very important for survival. But if the only kind of attention you pay is this very narrowly targeted attention, very precisely to a detail that you want to get, you won't last, because at the same time you've got to have a completely different kind of attention, which is broad, open, vigilant, looking out for predators, looking out for your mate, looking out for your offspring that you also need to be feeding and looking after. So in nature, going back at least 700 million years, all neural networks are asymmetrical, because I think of this need to do two completely different kinds of things at the same time.
You then suggesting that our cultural institutions and our systems of government are unduly biased by this meticulous focus that is attributed to the left brain at the expense of the more visionary aspect of the right brain, even though I'm sort of tiptoeing down this imaginary and real equator in order to avoid toppling into this interpretation.
Yeah. No, that's right. I mean, broadly speaking, the answer is yes, but I think I ought to do a little more unpacking first, otherwise people won't see what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I'm sick and tired of people's ignorance. Unpack everything, if you would, please, Ian.
Okay. I don't mind if I do. No, the thing is this. Effectively, I've described two kinds of attention, and that may not electrify people. In fact, when I first realized that the fundamental difference between the two brain hemispheres was the way they pay attention to the world, the penny didn't immediately drop, because I've been brought up in this very machine-like system of psychology that, you know, it's a function of a machine, the brain, but it isn't actually. Attention is something a machine can't give. It can be made to. You can turn the camera where you like. It's not attending. Only a conscious person like you or I can attend. And when we attend, we bring about a different kind of world. And if you think about it, the same body, the mortuary slab, in a model's artistic setting, the body of your lover, the body of your aunt, they all evoke different things and are seen differently, but they're still bodies. And so the way in which we look at something matters a lot. If we look at something in a very detached way, in which we're fragmenting it and not allowing ourselves to interact with it, we see it as a thing that we can use. Whereas I think the importance cannot be overstated of relationship, that really everything is made of relations, not of things. We have an idea that the world is full of things, and then how are they related, and how am I related to them? But I have this view that actually the primary thing is relations, and that things are the bits of this picture that stand out for us. But in any case.
Yeah, that's cool. So there's this tendency to look at things due to utility, which would have an obvious evolutionary function.
Exactly.
But there's Deleuze's ideas that we should look at things in the model of machines, that they are interrelated systems that are ultimately relational, that there is no, like a bicycle isn't a bicycle until you use it as a bicycle.
Yes, that's true. And that takes on to the business of context. So in the left hemisphere, there just appear to be these isolated things that it targets and then moves to another target and so on. So it sees the world as built up from fragments, and they don't have any meaning until it's put them together in some kind of a way. And it sees them as static, so that it can grab them easily, familiar because it's what it's looking for, food or a twig to build a nest or whatever it is, decontextualized, disembodied, de-animated, in other words, inanimate, and effectively something that is only of use. Whereas in the right hemisphere, you see that nothing is actually completely separate from anything else, that everything is connected, flowing web. So it's not static, it's changing, and that context matters. When you take something out of context, you change it, that the world is embodied, that it has emotional and moral value, and that it is a living world, a complex and beautiful world. So we have different visions, if you like.
It seems that based on what you were just saying, Ian, that the right hemisphere has a capacity for atemporal and aspatial thought, not governed by the presumption of context that perhaps could be regarded as animalistic, i.e., even concepts such as space and time are quite sort of almost spatially subjective. It's only when you live in an environment that needs to function in a particular way that ideas like time as experienced through entropy and space as it appears from the relationships one might achieve in space even become relevant. I was wondering why you were talking also about what type of relationship might an ape such as our species have with a tree pre-linguistically. How do we distinguish ourselves from our environment prior to language? Before we sort of delve into that subject, and you give me a conclusive answer, please. No beating around the bush, metaphorical or otherwise. Before we get to that, I want to let our YouTube audience know that we're going to move exclusively to being on Rumble now, because I'm going to ask Ian McGilchrist about how during the pandemic era, lockdowns and government control induced a degree of compliance, and whether or not there's an advantage to locating our behavior and our decisions in this more empirical left brain like a minute ago, you talked about like how the sort of the ability to focus on detail and utility.
Yes, that's not the same as empiricism. Empiricism is
demonstrable, provable.
Empiricism is derivation from experience.
You're going to have to get off YouTube now before you have the derivation from experience is going to be explained to me and everyone who clicks over to Rumble. If you're watching this on YouTube, join us on Rumble. There's a link in the description.
extracted or needlessly amplified become detrimental. That an advanced civilization ought bear in mind, precisely as you say, not only traditions which can be sometimes oppressive, exclusive, and potentially tyrannical, but traditions that are in place to carry our relationship to the soil, our relationship to one another, our relationship to our values and our principles. And I feel that those things have been kind of annihilated in order that, as I say, insidious and difficult to determine economic models so that they can be transplanted and transposed by for example, take once more the pandemic, just because it provides such a convenient lens during this time where sort of safety was brought to the forefront, during this time of crisis, just because I believe it is an economic ideology ultimately. So by observing the economics, one can, or at least it plays out economically, and those are observable symptoms. If there was a wealth transfer that demonstrably there was that if like big tech platforms benefited, government benefited from the ability to regulate, the pharmaceutical industry saw record profits, the media benefited. There are sort of institutional forces that benefit from ongoing crisis. We have, in fact, some facts here. For 2022, the total global pharmaceutical revenue was estimated at $1.48 trillion US, and antidepressant drugs market revenue across the US was at 22. Is predicted to be at $22 billion by the year 2027. Some of these statistics relate to mental health. Some of them obviously relate to particular medications. But I suppose what I'm bringing to bear is this: if people do not have an awareness of individual traditions and do not revere their own heritage while respecting other people's heritage, that it's very easy for our ideologies to be usurped. And I think that this culture of consumerism and commodification of everything has...
Well, you're right that a capitalist society is benefited by destroying human bonds, traditions, because it will get in the way of the mechanical manipulation of people as units that will consume. And of course, that's such a terrifically impoverished vision of what a society is. I mean, one can hardly begin expressing how negative that is. But I just want to comment before I say anything else about your point that, perhaps if we pay too much attention to tradition, outsider groups will be, not welcomed. And there's something in that, because a tradition can become sclerosed. It is true. But to throw away a tradition on the basis that if you don't look after it, it can become sclerosed is not a good one. And in fact, in my lifetime, what I have noticed is that relations between the races have frankly got worse. During my lifetime, relations between the sexes have got worse. In my lifetime, the gap between the super rich and the poor has got greater, not smaller. In my lifetime, freedom has become curtailed in very obvious ways, disastrous ways that make this look like on the way to being a totalitarian state. So at the time, in the 60s, we wanted freedom. We wanted men and women to get on well, the races to get on well, and for, the gap between rich and poor to be closed. And exactly the opposite has happened. And this is partly because of the inability to think from one thread. This is good, this is my slogan, I can express it in a word or two words, that's what we go for. But there is always another side to every question, and it's the neglect of the downside of what one is doing that is leading us into ruin, where our eyes are being drawn away. And perhaps, if I wanted to be a bit paranoid, as you might prefer, I would think this was deliberately schematized. But I think that we're being asked not to look at the downside of what's going on, because it's so terrifying. Through pursuing what look like good ends, we have reached the exact opposite. And this is to do with the coincidence of opposites, which would take us into another philosophical realm altogether. But I argue that, we have this linear view of life, that this is over here and that is over there. And the further you go that way, the better, or the further you go that way, depending on what you want. But actually what happens is they curve round and come together. Since I was young, since you were young, you probably noticed what I did, that the extreme left and the extreme right have more in common than anybody in the middle.
Yes, I think you're right. In some ways, I completely agree. The utopianism of the Cultural Revolution, I felt, was earnest, and I feel that the journey from the kind of collective goodwill that the countercultural, anti-war, civil rights movement, I feel that that too was devoured and repurposed by the machine. I think that it's very easy for things to become commodified, for identity to become commodified. For example, if we look like just one current media furore, the Budweiser light scandal, in case it has escaped
You passed me by, I'm sorry.
But what happened is that Budweiser Light used a trans woman to promote their beers. This provoked blue collar Americans, the traditional, one might argue, consumers of Budweiser Light to sort of protest and sort of vocally and publicly reject this new advertising model. And a kind of cultural war in miniature ensued all around the product of Budweiser Light. But of course, in my view, Budweiser Light doesn't care whether people are trans and progressive around identity issues or traditional. It doesn't care what class you're from. It cares only about markets. I think
the cynical marketing route.
Yes, because that's its only metric by which it survives and succeeds. It's the only necessary or relevant metric. And I think that this perhaps can be mapped onto many of the conflicts of our time, that people are, it was the gay rights activist Peter Tatchell that told me a long time ago that in his experience around civil rights issues, whilst they are obviously significant, he dedicated his life to gay rights, for example. He said that whilst he had discovered in his personal experience that people would cede on civil rights issues ultimately and eventually, when it came to matters of finance, he had noticed that there was a sort of a hard and impermeable edifice that could not be breached. And I feel that what's happening is the cultural conversation is being directed into areas that cause more conflagration and infighting among ordinary people, rather than allowing people to come together to confront the centralized authority that is better centralized authoritative institutions, be they governmental or corporate, that are benefiting from these ongoing conflicts. I wonder if, please.
No, I was just going to say, in my view, based on my life experience, is that generally speaking, when things go wrong, it's more cock up than conspiracy. And one can see these things being engineered, and in some cases, I'm sure they are, and you're right. But generally, this is a drift that I would have predicted from enslavement, by being hypnotized by this left hemispheric way of thinking.
Tell me what you mean, please.
Well, it's not aware of the complexities, the different strands, the fact that opposites tend to coincide. It thinks has a very simple map, and it doesn't deal with the uniqueness of an individual. It talks only about categories. So everybody is just a category and a representative of that category. This is how the left hemisphere works. It abstracts, takes things out of context, gets rid of their individuality, fits them into a mechanical model. Now, if you start doing that in society, what you will get is a great deal of opposition from people who resent this feeling that they're no longer allowed to speak for themselves but have to be part of a group and so forth. And the more it's promoted, the more resentment it will build up. And eventually you will get populist people who will not be doing good, but will be voted for because they alone seem to have any possibility of moving things away from a world which I think has been generated by patronizing liberal middle class intellectuals who basically they secretly think that people are stupid.
Yes.
And anyone who doesn't belong to their clique is stupid. And they have made this so obvious now that they're destroying universities, they're destroying the law, they're destroying politics.
Of course, technology must not ultimately, but perhaps is currently a reflection of the human intelligence that designs it. And the way that these models function in particular currently affords a great deal of data analysis, and perhaps this data analysis is an interesting reflection of what you are saying about the hemispheric biases that may be informing our current cultural trajectory. Perhaps this is bolstered by the ability of technology to accrue data, but only on the basis of observable data points, leading to conclusions that, while deductive, are also reductive. Is
Yes,
it
I mean-
possible that the tools that are being used are incapable of incorporating the aspatial, atemporal qualities that you referred to earlier in our conversation?
Well, I'd have to talk about that separately if we have time, but because I don't think
We do have time.
all right. Okay. I mean, first of all, let's talk about economics, because there are 2 points in economics that really demonstrate what I think we're both getting at here. One is the old saying, well, we've shown that it works in practice, but we can't prove that it's right in theory. Now, that's the wonderful left hemisphere inversion, this economic thing works, but it's not our theory. And the other observation is that, made by economists, that over the last 20 years, events that were palpable, aspects of the picture that were very obvious, were deliberately ignored because it didn't fit into the theory. Or maybe not even deliberately ignored. I mean, there's something like this, that if you have a theory that says it's got to be like that,
You're observing some of the messaging that comes through.
I do,
That's
yes.
the left
It's
brain.
another problem with AI, yes.
Very demanding,
Yes, yes.
dictatorial.
But basically, the left,
What is the information that's not included in the analysis? Can you give us an example of that?
well, I'm not an economist, unfortunately, but I can see in the world around me that people deny things that seem to me pretty obvious, and I want to go referring to a brilliant philosopher, Hannah Arendt, who was a German Jewish philosopher, as you know. And
Yeah,
had
the
first-hand-
finality of evil.
Yes, and exactly, and the first-hand experience of Nazism. But she said a couple of things that really strike me. One is, when there are things that you cannot say, you live in a tyranny. So right now, in 2023 in Britain, we live in a tyranny, one we have brought upon ourselves by just not opposing these kind of moves that I think are the sort of wokerati's moves, which will eventually destroy our institutions and destroy the culture that is very important to us. Of course, it has its weaknesses, but it's got an awful lot also that it's achieved, and there's used to be admired all around the world for that. So there's that. And the other thing she said is, best person for a totalitarian regime is not the prototypical Nazi or the prototypical communist, but the person who no longer knows the difference between true and false. And I think that's the world we're coming into now. There's a big issue. There are all sorts of ways in which it's harder to know what to trust, who to trust. And a 3rd century Chinese emperor said, in a society, you need 3 things: guns, food, and trust. If you have to give away one of them, it's guns. If you have to get rid of another, it's food. But you should hang on to trust, because no society can flourish without trust.
The bewilderment of not having a strong foundation, and I suppose the connection between foundations and traditions is one that needn't be overly emphasized. I suppose what we're experiencing is there is not a consensus anymore. There is not a consensus around how we ought to organize.
No, I think there is a consensus. I think it's very clear what the consensus is. It's what a group of far left-leaning intellectuals decided was the only moral way or the only right way, and they're already being proved drastically wrong by the things it's now leading to. In other words, all the opposites of the good aims that it was supposed to be achieving.
That's extraordinary. But that consensus is kind of cloistered. It's not a broad consensus, while it might be, I suppose you're saying, it's informed policy.
They may be a very small number, but they have enormous influence over media, including social media and so on. May I just mention something? In the 16th century, the English ambassador to the lowlands, Holland basically, wrote
I still call them the Lowlands. I will not refer to them as the Netherlands.
anything other
Lowlands.
the Netherlands, whatever it was. The ambassador wrote home about the Puritans going around in the Reformation. And what he said was a rather disciplined band, a small band, went from church to church, taking sledgehammers to these wonderful statues, breaking the stained glass, burning the old manuscripts. And these were probably a handful, 20, 30 people, and the population was 10,000, and they all stood at the doors and just looked and watched these people going about their business and did nothing to intervene. That is where we are now.
Living in a time of undue and untethered iconoclasm. What I feel potentially might emerge as a result of the technology that is currently being used to inculcate the kind of compliance that we've been discussing is that it may be differently utilized to create, once again, localized democracy. I suppose what I feel, Ian, is that we ought be emulating where possible the conditions of our evolution. And I don't mean in a Luddite way, let's retreat to the caves. I think we should observe how, but there were some ideas in there that are quite radical, and I mean literally anarchic, because it would just seem to me that with the type of technology and capacity for communication that we currently have, that even ideas like centralized state authority, the nation itself, might be exposed as temporal, and that in it is a challenge to some of the traditions and institutions that you plainly revere or hold, at least in some regard, and believe have a great deal to offer us, as I do. But what I personally am led by is the belief that at a time of ongoing cultural conflict, the a way that it might be diffused is to acknowledge that there are many different ways of being human being. There's nothing that is human. There's nothing in our evolution to suggest that we ought to be corralled together in groups of 300 million and simultaneously governed by one set of ideologies. And and when I've been having conversations with people that are described as being sort of right wing, the thing that I've brought to the conversation continually is, would you be willing to stand on a platform with people that you're ideologically opposite to, although I reckon you would refute the idea of opposition from the basis of your own study and expertise, if it meant that you were able to have autonomy in your own community? For example, like Ben Shapiro and people that are sort of openly libertarian or conservative. And they said, of course, they would stand on a platform that people had different views on the pro-life, pro-choice, pro-gun, anti-gun, in order to, in a sense, it would seem to me that we all be emulating the conditions of our origin and our evolution where possible, whether that's diet or the governance of the system or a group.
Yes. I mean, there's a very civil society, and in a different sense, we've become a very uncivil one, in which people are not willing to listen to someone else with whom they disagree and then say, that's interesting, I would completely disagree, my point of view would be this, what do you say to that? And you can do that without getting angry and vicious. But the general timbre is one of anger, self-righteousness, disgust. And this, let me say, in terms of hemisphere lateralization, this kind of emotional timbre is typical of the left hemisphere. The right is more willing to say, hang on, there may be something else going on here, and let me form a bond with this person. So that compassion is better than anger.
Yes. Well, would the attributes, or at least traits, that you just listed there in conventional psychiatry, am I right in saying, would be regarded as potentially unconscious responses? And I'm not sure how much you can value that kind of terminology. But sometimes what I feel is that we are governing from a place of unconsciousness, from unawareness. You talked extensively about attention, and it feels like that when righteousness, anger, these are sort of, I would say, motivated by lower levels of awareness. That's using a more sort of a sort of spiritual dialectic to analyze it, as opposed to a psychiatric one. But you must acknowledge that spirituality and psychiatry overlap almost continually.
Absolutely. A lot of my work is under the aegis of exactly that kind of a script that religion and science don't have at all. It's a myth that they have to be at war with one another. They're entirely compatible. And I've written about that. But, so just wanted to be well done. What I'm saying is that we ought to be able to talk about these things, and it should be absolutely wrong for anyone to be denied the right to say something. And I think one practical thing would be that government funding for universities would be depleted by 10% every time there's an event at which somebody is barred from speaking. And that's perfectly practical. It could be done, and it would encourage openness. And if a opposite point of view is obviously wrong, then please demonstrate it, but allow the other person to, have their say. The way I was educated was to argue a point of view and then stop and argue the opposite point of view. And I think that's really rather important. Everybody should leave school having had that in their head. There isn't one right answer to anything.
Shall we do that now? You be an edgy online provocateur, and I'm respected neuroscientist, Ian McGilchrist. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for presenting these arguments, in fact, so succinctly and beautifully for our audience. It's fantastic to speak with you. You're such a wonderful communicator and educator. Thank you, Ian McGilchrist, for joining us. The Matter with Things, Our Brains, Our Delusions, and the Unmaking of the World is available now. There's a link posted in the chat, and I would recommend you read the work of Ian McGilchrist, that you become better equipped to have conversations in a confusing world. If throughout this conversation you were thinking, I wish that bearded man would shut up and let Russell Brand just flow freely, then you're in luck, because it's time now for You've been slowing me down throughout this conversation, impeding me intellectually. My flights of fancy tethered. Let me fly like Icarus, who I believe flew towards the sun triumphantly without consequences.
Yeah.
It was fine, I believe. How that myth ends with Icarus circumnavigating the sun, successfully returning to Earth with his wings still bonded, I believe. Time now for a deeper look. Still ablaze, yeah. You got to burn to shine, Davey, as it says in the opening titles of The Sopranos. Time now for a more analytical approach to a news story from this week. Here's the news. No, here's the effing news.
No, here's the fucking news.
4 more years! 4 more years! But what about the last 4 years, Joe, you bloody old liar? Take the head off the serpent. Inform yourselves. Continue to educate us in the comments. We respond to what you tell us. Unlike the propagandists that govern the world's most powerful nation, unlike the atrophying zombie cadaver that inhabits the White House, haunting its corridors with old lies and deep state corruption, getting the CIA to back him up in blags to keep laptops out of the press. This is a time where we must change the world. Or should we just do 4 more years, backed up by glossy propaganda and lies? Let's see how Joe Biden's propaganda stands up to the hard facts. That's what people use at the beginning of movie trailers, even that noise and that sort of shot and the smoke and everything. Oh, January 6th, January 6th. Keep frightening people about January the 6th. Bad things do happen in the world. But the worst thing of all is an intransigent state that will lie to you and will use propaganda rather than ever directly addressing your needs by changing the system that's creating these problems.
Freedom.
Okay, freedom, is it? Stay free is one of our personal catchphrases. It's the name of our show over on Rumble. Freedom is vital because freedom suggests that at the level of the individual, the level of the community, the level of the nation, if you need such a thing as a nation, there ought to be the ability to be who you truly are. And we hope that that includes respecting and loving one another, taking on responsibility and duty without an external authoritarian force. Freedom is a very, very powerful word. It's obviously an impactful word. It's a word that the Joe Biden administration has chose to use centrally for this campaign. But the problem is they've been in government for 4 years now, so we know what they're about. You can't whoop up the same hysteria again. Can you let me know in the chat and the comments once you've seen what they've been doing?
Personal freedom is fundamental to who we are as Americans.
If you believe in freedom, what you're saying is we should be who we are, that you trust people to do the right thing. So you don't need to, for example, surveil them the whole time and steal their data, right? In February, the Biden administration urged Congress
to renew a warrantless surveillance law that allows the government to collect messages and phone data of Americans without court order. That amounts to without judicial process and without your consent. When it comes to saying it, he believes it. When it comes to legislating, he's against it. Could there be any more literal interpretation of freedom than not locking people in cages? I don't think so. Let's have a look at his record on incarceration. Biden pledged he'd cut incarceration in half. During his administration, the federal prison population has grown for the first time in a decade. So in spite of all that stuff, I feel like I remember to you. Let me know in the comments and chat. He says stuff like, it's wrong that African Americans make up such a large percentage of the prison population. Something that I frankly believe in strongly. Well, guess what? The prison population is increasing. I suppose it's just a coincidence that large corporations use prison labor as cheap labor to increase their profit. It can't be connected to that because Joe Biden believes in freedom. You heard him say it, didn't you? He couldn't be lying.
But you know, around the country, MAGA extremists are lining up to take on those bedrock freedoms.
Much of this is clearly an attempt to address the idea that their opponents are extreme. The idea of extremity is, of course, subjective. What is extreme? What might be extreme to you may not be extreme to me when it comes to personal practice around culture, sexuality, ideology. These are things that we have to be able to, as much as possible, determine as individuals, of course, always with the caveat that we don't harm anybody else. But if Joe Biden loathes MAGA America so much and the MAGA movement so deeply, you would be sure, right, that he would never, under any circumstances at all, use Democrat Party funding to underwrite the campaign of MAGA candidates. I mean, that would be hypocritical, disingenuous, evidence that you've got no real morality, that you're just a careerist strategist who cares about serving corporate interests and will get into government no matter what, even if it involves paying for the campaigns of the people you claim to hate, amplifying messages that you think, you believe, you say you believe, are harming America. So paying for their advertisements, their commercials, that would be off limits, right? Wrong. Democrats spent tens of millions amplifying far-right, they call them far-right, candidates in 9 states in an attempt to ensure their candidates face less appealing opponents in the general election. You might be a cynical, jaded individual and say, well, that's brilliant strategy. If you genuinely believe that the messaging of these, as they say, far-right candidates is negative, then you wouldn't want to amplify that messaging because more people are going to be subject to it. If you believe that they're racist or homophobic or against people's identities and culture later on in this piece of propaganda, the right to love who you want to love, you wouldn't amplify voices that were against that, would you? You'd want to oppose those ideas. That's why this piece of propaganda is so galling.
Cutting Social Security that you paid for your entire life while cutting taxes for the very wealthy.
Right, so it's wrong to cut taxes for the very wealthy. Have we found a principle? Have we found a principle in there? Let's have a look at the facts. The Democrats' Build Back Better bill is a gigantic tax cut for millionaires and billionaires. Under Biden, Democratic lawmakers pushed a regressive proposal to allow wealthy property owners to deduct more of their state and local taxes, aka SALT, from their federal taxes. This initiative provides almost no benefit to the working class, but enriches their already rich donors. Another example of using rhetoric to appeal to your audience while legislating on behalf of your donors. You know how this works, don't you? You don't need me to tell you this, but it's nice to see it all in one place, isn't it? It's nice to contrast it with their propaganda, isn't it?
Banning books and telling people who they can love.
So the culture war that they claim is so bad, they stoke it on 2 sides. 1, they fund people that say stuff that they claim is hateful. 2, they use provocative imagery in their own propaganda. They ain't about healing America. They're about breaking America because they benefit from the fracture. Your wounds are their treasure.
Dictating what healthcare decisions women can make.
One of the things the Biden administration is always banging on about is healthcare. Well, here's a fact. 15 million American people are currently being quietly phased out of receiving Medicaid and Children's Health Insurance Program benefits. Just quietly phasing them out. They won't make much noise because they're ill.
All while making it more difficult for you to be able to vote.
Well, we know now that when it comes to claiming that elections are fraudulent, the Democrats are just the same as Donald Trump. When the Democrats lose, they claim that there are fraudulent electoral machines, broken machines, Russian hacking. They'll say whatever they want to say. Whoever wins the next election, whether it's this guy, whoever else the other party put up, the one that wins will say, thank you, we're going to heal America, while legislating on behalf of their rich donors, and the side that loses will go, electoral
more fraud. In October 2021, Democrats scaled back plans for a crackdown on tax cheating, bowing to an aggressive lobbying campaign by the banking industry. So who do they work for? Do they work for all these like construction workers and people of various colours and identities, who I believe they should be working for, by the way, that we should be healing America, that we should be accepting diversity, inclusivity. All these words they use are, in my opinion, the right words, as long as you include that people want to live differently all along the spectrum of different identities and cultural values. As long as you accept that, we're all cool, aren't we? They bow to the pressure of the lobbying industry. You know that. That's why there is a lobbying industry. And never forget this electoral pledge, because it's certainly more reliable than any other pledge Biden made. Joe Biden told rich donors on the campaign trail that nothing would fundamentally change if he were elected president. Great work, Joe. 4 more years. For much of the last decade, Democrats complained that Republicans were backed by dark money. Then came the 2020 election, where donors and operatives allied with the Democratic Party embraced dark money, surpassing Republicans in 2020 spending. One thing we've got to stop is this dark money. Or, I don't know, maybe we could use dark money ourselves and more than our opponents. Dark money is good.
When I ran for president 4 years ago, I said we're in a battle for the soul of America.
Often the rhetoric is correct. We are in a battle for the soul of America, for the soul of the world, but you can't access the soul without some spiritual values. If you don't believe in spirituality, you know that I do. What you need are just moral principles: kindness, service, gratitude, community, ideas that you can't just change depending on your required outcome. We cannot allow these MAGA voices. Here's some money for some MAGA voices. We cannot stop this culture war. Stop the culture war. We have to legislate on behalf of ordinary Americans. Thank you for the banking money. We're going to crush ordinary Americans. You have to have principles that cost you.
And we still are. The question we're facing is whether in the years ahead we have more freedom or less freedom.
Certainly you're going to have less sick days, in spite of his pledge to ensure that American workers would have 7 days per year sick days available to them. Is another pledge broken. As part of his 2020 presidential campaign, Biden pledged that he would ensure all workers have at least 7 paid sick days. In December, Biden and the US Congress forced workers to accept an agreement without sick days and made a rail strike illegal. Fortunately, it didn't lead to an ecological disaster involving trains careering off of the tracks and spilling chemicals all over the environment, which, as you know, the Democrats love so much. The rail industry's lobbying group, this is just a coincidence, not relevant. The rail industry's lobbying group spent more than $13 million lobbying Congress, but that probably doesn't make a difference, right?
More rates or fewer? I know what I want the answer to be, and I think you do too. This is not a time to be complacent.
No, not a time to be complacent. And it's certainly not a time to be funneling American tax dollars towards an unwinnable proxy war. President Biden said, let me be clear, our forces are not engaged and will not engage in the conflict with Russian forces in Ukraine. He had made this promise many times. There will be no US boots on the ground in Ukraine. The recent Pentagon leaks proved this is not the case, or alternatively, a lie. Soon after the Ukraine war broke out last year, Congress voted to appropriate $40 billion in aid to Ukraine. Every single Democrat voted for it. This is another bit of information. It's probably irrelevant, but I'll just give it to you anyway, and you can decide whether it's relevant using your own powers of deduction. The defense sector spent $25 million lobbying the Democrats during the 2020 campaign cycle, but that can't be connected to the $40 billion of aid, half of which ended up going to the military-industrial complex, and 70% of the weapons that went to Ukraine can't be traced now, and the Pentagon have failed 5 consecutive audits. These things are all just probably conspiracy theories that have just somehow been proven by facts.
President Trump has not punished senior Saudi leaders. Would you?
Yes.
One thing I remember is in those head-to-head battles with Donald Trump, when Biden said he would make Saudi Arabia a pariah.
Make them, in fact, the pariah that they are.
Which is not only a catchy and almost rhyming sentence, it's a policy we can rely on and no, won't have been broken. Biden vowed not to sell more weapons to the Saudis if he became president. Last year, the Biden administration approved 2 massive arms sales to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. 4 more years?
That's why I'm running for re-election.
The problem is propaganda, is it works. Like the music works, the sepia imagery works, the close-ups work of vulnerable people, of a variety of views. If you're a decent, upstanding individual, and basically we all are, then you find this kind of stuff appealing. It bypasses your ability to reason. Because if you use your ability to reason, you look at the facts and say, look, this Democrat Party, They're not going to do anything. And the Republican Party aren't really going to do anything either. Should we have a look at this whole system? Because clearly the technology exists now for us to have a genuine independent movement. We've got independent media now. We can countenance all their false narratives. We can build a political movement that's a genuine reflection of the varying requirements of American people. If we have more decentralization and democracy, people with different cultural requirements could live different types of lives, and the conflict between them could ultimately be ended through democracy, direct democracy, decentralized, communal democracy. Would that work? Yes. Of course it would bloody work. It wouldn't be perfect, it would be better than this. Now, rather than letting that happen, they can keep you tethered by your heartstrings into believing that some doddering old sod, who's basically a liar, career politician, deep state affiliate, who works for the globalist corporate machine, is going to do anything different in the next 4 years than he did in the last 4 years. Even if you want to optimistically believe that Joe Biden's lovely, and on some level he will be, because he's a human being like you or me. He's not going to be able to do anything, because he works within a system that ain't changing anytime soon. Let me know in the chat in the comments if you agree.
Because I know America. I know we're good and decent people. I know we're still a country that believes in honesty and respect and treating each other with dignity.
Where was the honesty and respect when they were keeping the Hunter Biden laptop story out of the news because they thought it would affect the outcome of the 2020 election? Where was the honesty and respect then?
That we're a nation where we give hate no safe harbor. We believe that everyone is equal, that everyone should be given a fair shot to succeed in this country.
As always, the stuff that they're saying is actually true. That is what should happen, but that isn't systemically possible anymore. That's what needs to be addressed. The system is broken. We should actually just start saying, you know, like if you're talking to a drunk or something, like, are you 4 more years and it's all going to be okay? Well, that'll be nice. Oh, good, there'll be no more wars like the last 4 years. That's nice, and everyone's going to, I love it. Okay, well, you sit down, have a blanket. Should we take over? Yeah, we should probably take over. I think he's wet himself.
So if you're with me, go to joebiden.com and sign up.
If you actually go to that Joe Biden website, it simply asks you for some money. Let me know in the chat and the comments which one of Biden's lies you find most offensive. Let me know which stories we've missed, which hypocrisies we've not pointed out. Let me know if you think there's something we're missing, that they're actually doing the best that they can, and maybe we should accept this total bullshit. Let us know all of it.
Let's finish this, Joe. I know we can. Because this is the United States of America. There's nothing, simply nothing we cannot do if we work together.
This is a product of corporate meetings and commercial consultancy. Like when people say things like, we'll use Joe Biden's handwriting. Now, look, Joe, with great respect, some people think that maybe you're a little old, and that doesn't need to be a problem because we can make you look dynamic, and we can say that the fact is that you're a statesman and that your experience, all of it is a construct. When it is contrasted with the facts of the matter, which point to a deeply corrupt system that is in part the result of career politicians and the inability of ordinary self-governance to emerge through assemblies, through true accountability from the military-industrial complex and the corporate and financial world, a genuine ability to run your communities, a genuine opportunity to be different and live differently and respect different values and traditions and ideologies. You can't ever allow that to happen because that will impede the interests of the powerful. This is, in a way, a beautiful piece of propaganda, but it's completely untrue. It doesn't hold up very well to the facts, not during a time where there's been a massive wealth transfer, where there's been increased surveillance, where protest laws are on the rise, the militarization of the police force is happening, the pharmaceutical industry, record profits. All of these things are facts. You have to accept and embrace these things. Even in this propaganda video, it was an opportunity to say, look, I don't think it's been really mental. We haven't been able to do the stuff we want. You can't ever do that. That's not how they talk. And that's why they fall prey to people who are able to talk somewhere within the meter of authenticity, even if I don't think they're going to be particularly successful either. Let me know what you think we've missed. What are the worst travesties of Biden's election? What are the most egregious uses of propaganda there? Let me know if there's anything we've missed. Basically, what I think that is a piece of brilliantly made, disgusting, deceitful propaganda. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments and chat, and we'll pick up on that next week. Hasn't it been a fantastic week on Stay Free? Join us next week, not for more of the same, but for more of the different. Until then, stay free.
Damn, get back here.
Oatmeal.
I think they're scared they don't too limited cover. That might be what it is.
Oats. Oatmeal.
How can you lose?
What the hell with this?
Yeah, crowd.
Yeah, I'm on camera.
Well, how about that? Looks like y'all got a lot of stuff here to walk.
You're never going to believe it, but this can filter up to 60 different contaminants from your water.
It's all about cleaner drinking water.
This one is also like, they just want you to push a healthy port, which is exactly what I'm gonna do, but I don't. I am very undergeared right now with the Signal 50. Signal 50 is very cool. It has high velocity rounds. Oh no, I don't, oh no way. I didn't bring my spotter scope. Oh, come on, no spotter scope.
Or you like just jump from the silo to the platform there. Hearing that Orangi is going rough. Random weapons or no weapons at all. Something friend request, ignore party events. Okay, off ledges for jokes like that. Yeah. Sure, go. Monkey is getting some. Is getting stinked. Let's open. Gear up the position. Yeah, but just that I don't. Why did they give you free buildings when you want? It's gonna go solo. And I got this. I'm very big. So big. What the other reason the operator's name is wrong. I heard that it's really expensive. I'm taking the heat sensor, drop it in a desktop, and it just slew it down by 2 hours.
Welcome to Al Mazrah. Explore, secure intel, and move to gain access to new missions. Enemy threat high, so expect contact.
Oh yeah, dude, I know. I'm not sure if you can make it so, like from the side to the. Okay, yeah, no, I'm gonna go from bug route, not the architecture in there. Let's go. That's where you'll take it. Let's check upstairs. See if I can find something for Fest. is second hand. Second hand in the and so we need one more battery.
Your insured weapons are back at base. Move to an exfil point when ready.
It's so weird. It's such a weird bug, dude. Like, just drop your heartbeat sensor in there, and you're done. Okay, so we need one more battery.
Your insured weapons are back at base. Move to an exfil point when ready.
So